All right, good evening, everyone. Thomas Albritton here again for another session of history from a guy with a stroke brain and some other fun stuff. Um, for those who don't know, I did have a stroke. It'll be a year next Friday, August 7th. Is my 1 year stroke anniversary. Hanging in there, doing pretty good. Still got a lot of issues to deal with. Still dizzy, still a little wobbly. I still use a cane if I'm outside. Inside and outside are totally different for me. Still dealing with a lot, going to therapy, still doing therapy for that. It's been wonderful, great people helping me, finally getting the answers and help that I needed. Just took a little while, these things aren't easy. But yeah, we're hanging in there, and I'm happy to say I'm feeling pretty good. It's been down the last little bit. That's why you haven't heard from me in a while. We've had some wildfire smoke, which is crazy right now out here in Idaho, in the Pacific Northwest. It's a struggle. But anyways, I haven't felt the greatest, so I wasn't up to doing this. And as I've mentioned before, it takes a lot. But last time we talked about the greatest generation and the sacrifices they made, and I asked if I don't know that we're going to meet the challenge that they did. They stepped up and they they helped the world fight fascism, and it was pretty ugly for everybody. Not just the soldiers, but people at home, everywhere. It's not only soldiers that suffer; it's the civilian population as well. We're seeing that in different areas of the world right now. Anyways, I'd also said I would talk about Lincoln and Kennedy. I'd like to read a little bit from what they have. It's called Lincoln and Kennedy Challenged a Nation. But will we rise to that challenge? They both spoke. And coming in November, we're going to have the anniversary of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, November 19th, 1863. And we also have the assassination of John F. Kennedy, November 22nd, 1963. But these two men wrote some very profound things, and I believe they can be very, very instructive, and they can, they ask questions that I think we should be asking and trying to meet the challenge of the day, because we have some challenges. So here we go. So after these anniversaries were coming up, I decided I would write about it a little bit, and this is what I wrote. So I found myself reading and rereading Lincoln's words and Kennedy's speeches. Lincoln wanted to honor the brave men, living and dead, who fought and died on the battlefield in Gettysburg during the Civil War. Not only did Lincoln honor these men, but he also asked whether this great nation could survive the proposition that all men are created equal, conceived in the idea of liberty, and whether it could long endure. It is still as relevant a question today as it was then. Yeah, something to sit on right there and think about it. And President Kennedy also challenged us to look forward and ask what we could do for our country. Kennedy believed history would judge us on four principles: courage, judgment, integrity, and dedication. Will we live up to the ideals that once moved our great nation forward, or will we perish from the earth? Lincoln said, "The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here." Lincoln also spoke about how they and I believe we today, the living, must be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. Let's back up. Lincoln said, and spoke about how they and me, I believe, this is my word now, I believe we today, back to Lincoln, the living must be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. Now he's talking about the Battle of Gettysburg, and it was a bloody battle. It was horrible. If you want to remind yourself, you look up the Battle of Gettysburg. It's not for the faint of heart, and most of the wars aren't. And so I think we need to remind ourselves of these things. You know, will we live up to these ideals, or will we perish from the earth? So Lincoln also said, you believe today. I'm going to reread this again because it's so important. He also spoke of how they believe we today, the living, must be dedicated here to the unfinished works which they who fought here have thus so far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom, and that a government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. That's pretty strong stuff when you really listen to it. So, as I absorbed the wisdom in Lincoln's words, I wondered if we are still dedicated to the great task before us. Are we still dedicated to the belief that all people are created equal? Are we? Can this nation truly endure? Are we a city upon a hill, a city upon which the world is watching, as President John F. Kennedy reminded us in 1961? Are we? I don't think we are that city anymore. We're not the shining light. We're not a beacon on a hill. We've fallen rather far. I'm not saying I'm not proud of this country. I am proud of this country, but I'm also ashamed at the same time. You can be both. It's not hard. You can be both, proud and ashamed. We have ugly truths in our history, and in our and with what's going on today. It's ugly truths, but it's true. You know, and we can fix these. We can correct course. So, excuse me. So reflecting on Kennedy's words, I wonder where the courage is to stand against the hate and bigotry we see in many leaders today. Kennedy believed 4 questions would answer whether we were a success or failure. Of the High Court of History sits in judgment on each one of us. We are being judged, whether you like it or not. You, me, we all are being judged. Where is the judgment to look not only to our future, but to learn from our past and be willing to acknowledge our mistakes? Where is the integrity to fulfill our sacred trust, our principles, our oath to the Constitution? Where is the dedication to service for the public good? The ideals of Kennedy and Lincoln were not based on retribution, concentration camps, and jailing political enemies. They were based on the ideals that our nation could long endure with courage, judgment, integrity, and dedication. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Excuse me. We can long endure. But we need to meet that challenge, and we need to meet it soon, or it will be lost. You know, there's not a whole lot we can do about that sometimes, but there is a lot we can do about it too. You know, we shouldn't say we don't. There isn't a lot we can do. There is a lot. It just takes that dedication. You know, That's all it takes. Anyways, well, I did about 10 minutes. I'm still hanging in there. I think I'm going to kind of hit on a couple other little things real quick. Like I said, I'm still hanging in there. 1 year anniversary coming up for the stroke. I like my history. I love history. Most of my historical readings and information I've gathered comes from the indigenous people's histories. I that was my focus as I was doing my college coursework. Of course, we did a lot of different histories. You have to learn a lot. You have to understand that there are many things going on at the same time. Usually, Native American tribes, it's okay. Indigenous peoples, and but specifically, if you're talking of a certain group, you want to use their name, such as Shoshone or Nimipu for the Nez Perce, or Apache, Navajo, Niue. There's so many different tribes out there, thousands. Although we only recognize less than 500 federally, or right, roughly that. Um, it's pretty crazy. So I've read a lot of authors um, from the indigenous world, and I'm happy to say they're wonderful reading. It's sad. I did a big paper and deal for my master's, and it had to do with photographs of Native Americans. And it had something. It was had to deal with something. We call it the vanishing Indian, and they haven't vanished. They live among us today. So there's a lot of history there, and it would behoove you to really look at these things. And if you need anything, I can always throw out some authors or books, or if you just want to learn about being a historian, I've got books for that too. There are things to look for. It's a deep world. Doesn't mean it's not that you can't do it. You learn to think a little differently, that's all. It's not that we're better or smarter. We just look at many different aspects of what's going on at the time. Usually not one incident causes the big blow up. Okay? It could be many little instances that agitate and cause a big rift or a small rift, or there's different types of things going on in the world all at the same time. So even back then, I love reading some history from the Native Americans. There's a lot of good books out there, I'm telling you. Playing Indian is a good book. This is by Philip J. Deloria. It's a great, great book. If you want some really good reading about Native Americans. I have a history book that we used when I was doing my history courses, and it's an amazing book. It's called The Landscape of History. I know how historians map the past. It's by John Lewis Gaddis. It's a wonderful book. Let me shoot some others here. Here's the one I was just telling you about. Playing Indian by Mr. Deloria. The Inconvenient Indian. This is a good one by Thomas King. It's a wonderful book. It's a good book also. And if you really want to get down and dirty, an indigenous people's history of the United States. Yeah, look at all these tabs. This is how fascinating this was to me, that I had to put all these tabs in there so I could go back and reread. I mean, it's wonderful history. And if you're interested in learning about the United States, Russia, and some others, Russia, Europe, and America by The Road to Unfreedom by Timothy Schneider. Wonderful books. These are some of the picks that I have if you want to read some good history. There's another one called uh, Confederates in the Attic. Okay, Confederates in the Attic. That's a wonderful book. Gives you a little bit of insight into the heritage that they talk about with Southern peoples and the Civil War, and it's an interesting read, but it'll give you an idea of what's going on. I love my history. I've done research in archaeology as well. I've done a big, nice little paper on what's called the Buell Woman Burial. This was a young woman who was buried over by Buell, Idaho, and her her burial site is one of the earliest traditions in Idaho. It dates back anywhere from 9,000 to 15,000 BP before present. It's a wonderful, wonderful little deal. They do have stuff at the Harris Center in Twin Falls. They have many of the bones and excavations. The burial was found in a rock quarry over there. Um, it's really interesting stuff. You should look into that as well. Um, let's see here. I can tell you a little bit more about it. It's in Twin Falls County, and you can't go there. You know, some of these sites. It's up to 15,000 years ago. Let's see. Yeah, that's a really good one. There were bones. There was, gosh, what else was there? Yeah, so it was a female, young female. She was 17 to 21 years of age. No cause of death could be determined. Okay. She was about 5'2". The American Indian descent. It's quite interesting. She was found to be in fairly good health, actually. You know, they found. This is kind of an interesting thing. The burial site yielded 4 artifacts. One was a badger baculum. It's the penis bone. Sorry, and it was put there too. A stemmed biface point, which is basically like an arrowhead. Okay, it's similar to that. It's shaped on both sides. They used she had a bone awl that was there. It had been broken, but these were there. People thought it was an offering or just something that she might need later. Anyway, that was pretty interesting stuff. And there's sites like this all throughout Idaho. There's one up in the Kelly Creek area, and that's about 16,000 years old as well. It's been used for generations and generations. There's several caves in Idaho where they found camels. That's really interesting to me, and sloths and tigers and huge bison. And yeah, it's fascinating stuff. So I really think you guys should look into some of this stuff. You know, put the screen down, grab a book. You can probably find all these on the internet too. I mean, it's not that hard. But yeah, it's great reading. It's interesting. You Something that kind of irked me the last time, since we were out since I was here the last time, was I caught a partial clip of some people talking about how their settler ancestors were 3 times tougher than them, and I imagine they were. I mean, you think about having come across a country in a wagon and walking. And I mean, it's pretty tough out there. You know, there's a lot can happen and go wrong. But they were talking about Indian attacks and all this, and I thought, we have history all wrong in this sense. Not that it's wrong, but we're not telling the whole story. This was the Native Americans' lands, the Shoshone peoples, the Paiute, um, the Nez Perce, the Coeur d'Alene. There's several tribes. There's 5 tribes here. You know, so I don't want to hear this about having to battle Indians. That was still their land you were taking. Their ancestors were buried there. So please, if you're going to talk about your ancestors coming here, talk about it in the right context. They were coming for free land mostly. But it wasn't free, it wasn't somebody else's to give away. People were using this land already for thousands and thousands of years before the white man ever decided to come here. So, if you're going to tell the story of this country, you have to tell it as complete as possible. You know, the story of America is a story of colonialism, and it was all about taking the land, and it was also genocidal, and most people don't like to hear that, but yeah. And in my world of history and reading and understanding the Native American histories, this is genocidal. They were literally wiping these people from the earth, and then they wanted to assimilate them so they could not use their cultures. I mean, that's genocide. There's many parts of genocide that and we met that criteria in making this country. So, yeah, be proud of the country. It is a good country, but you got to be realistic on what happened and how we got here. And I try to remind people of that. There's more to history than just what we are saying. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. There's more than 2 people. We had Chinese here in Idaho. We had Japanese here in Idaho. We treated them all terrible. I did a stint of, what do they call this? See, this is part of my problem. I can't find my words sometimes. I did an internship. There it comes. I had to think about it, go a roundabout way to find it in my head. But yeah, I did an internship with the Black History Museum of Idaho, and that was wonderful. But the gentleman that was running it, he also let me know that, blacks in Idaho, yes, they had their troubles, but they weren't seen as such a threat because there were so few. It's the way he thought. That's what he thought, the way he perceived it. So, with Native Americans living here on the land, traveling in and out, they understood the land. They could only be in certain parts of it at certain times because you could only get certain things at certain times. So you followed the land and you subsisted that way. So yeah, I think that's part of history. So yeah, that's kind of off the cuff, but I said it could be kind of fun and other stuff. Some of the other stuff I don't want to get into much because, yeah, maybe I will later. But I have pretty strong feelings about this country. I love it. My father was in the Army for 21 years and he's retired. He passed away in 2020. He had been in Vietnam and Agent Orange, and well, that's what happened there. But he was quite a dedicated man to this country. So I do believe in this country. I had 2 brothers that were in the military. I understand this country, but I understand it in a different way, that we can be proud, but we can be ashamed at the same time. 2 things can be true at the same time. Many things can be true at the same time. Doesn't mean one takes precedence over the other. So when we think about history, remember, there's a lot out there. There's a lot to think about. I think we talked about quite a bit of it before. You know, how do we look at it? How do we think about it? Who was involved? You know, there's a lot going on when thinking about history. So, anyways, I'm going to be wrapping up here pretty shortly. I'm trying to keep them at about 30 minutes or so, if not shorter. But I kind of wanted to get into that. There's a lot out there. You know, if you want to see, understand the Republican Party, let me show you this book. From George Wallace to Newt Gingrich. Interesting read if you want to learn about some of the things that were going on. Here's another one. It's called These Yet to Be United States Civil Rights and Civil Liberties in America since 1945. Good book. Good book. I had a whole library of books in different genres, not just history, but yeah, mostly history, I would say. There's a guy, I don't know, this is a little more, it's a little tougher book, but this man died before the book was completed during World War. Mark Bloch, The Historian's Craft. Very good. It's very good. So, you know, we always ask the question, what is history? That's a big question to ask. You know, we just don't know all the answers. We can, you know, get as much information as we can, and we try to frame it based on the good information, because there's a lot of bad information out there. So, anyways, I would, you know, if you want to read some of these, let me know. Ask. Put it in the comments. I can tell you. If you don't like my stuff, that's okay too. It's more therapy for me to be here talking and engaging my brain with my history or other subjects. And I haven't really broached any other real subjects. I want to, but then it's okay. I can do that too, but it gets me a little tense. I don't really care for it because I'm very disappointed with things, and I think we can do better. But anyways, I'm the history guy with a stroke brain, surviving, hanging in there, doing the best I can. Still not over everything. Still got a long ways to go. You know, maybe next time we'll see what we can come up with, and definitely be talking on my stroke anniversary on the 7th of August. I hope to have something put together for that too. So, anyways, you guys have a great evening or morning or whenever you decide to listen or not listen. It's all good to me. I hope you enjoyed it. If not, that's okay too. Like I said, it's more about my rehabilitation, trying to make my brain function a little better, trying to find my words, keep my memory, reading, and things like this. That's part of my recovery and rehab. So I really appreciate everybody hanging in there. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you the next time.